Alright, we're recording. This is exam 2 for communication class. I'm going to be reading 17 pages real fast and then going to sleep for a little bit so I can wake up and study for another 8 hours and listen to myself talk. Alright, reading material. Introduction to Reasoning, Part 3 Notes. Assertant or claimant. They are the task is to present a well-defined position for her hearers to consider and discuss. General procedures to support a claim. Draw attention to the generally accepted and relevant facts. Indicate what general rules, laws, and principles make these facts relevant to the claim. Make it clear how the available grounds and support provide a basis for the present claim rather than any alternative or rival claim. Claims that are ambiguous. Claims that are ambiguous may lead themselves to alternative interpretations. Rebuttal is an attack based on the absence of some particular exception condition. Pragmatic issues. The pragmatic issues are decisions of policy to be decided collaboratively between professional experts and the public representatives. So pragmatic issues are done by the experts, their policies, decisions. Alright. Part 5 Notes. Classification. Classification, the typical properties of plants, prize cattle, or WE are used on the basis for claims about them. Opposites. Things that are known to be radically different in some given respect are presumed to be equally different in some other respect. Degree. The different properties of a given thing are presumed to vary in step with one another. And initial presumptions are those opinions that it is in general reasonable to adopt in the absence of solid argument to the contrary. Example would be innocent till proven guilty. Argumentation, critical decision making. That's chapter 4, talking about analysis. Analysis is the examination of an argument situation for its claim and opposing claims to discover the issues and what arguments in support are valued most. 8 stages to the selection of a proposition. First, identify the question. Means that you need to refine your doubts into a clearly stated question and that represents the problem. Survey implicated objectives and values. Identify those objectives and values that seem to be related to the question and concerns you. Canvass alternative decisions. Weigh the costs and risks. Cost, values, and goods sacrificed by rejecting one alternative for another. Risk includes the degree of uncertainty involved and the strength of the worst case scenario. Search for new information. Criticize the alternatives. Note your biases and block alternatives. Select the proposition, make plans to implement the proposition, prepare contingency plans, build a case for your decision, so we get build a case. Determining issues, make a list of arguments for and against the proposition and then match them up. Uncontroversial matter, opposing claims that do not suggest an issue because they agree with one another. Critical values. Okay, here we go. Critical values. Clarity, significance, relevance or salience, and inherency. So, clarity, I don't have anything for it. Significance, well, I guess clarity just means are your critical values clear? Are your critical values significant? Where does your significance coincide and or does not coincide with the decision makers? Your relevance or salience, I guess how relevant the topic is. Inherency means that a weakness is a permanent attribute or a characteristic of something. We already know that. Inherency. Consistency. Alright, that was the last one for that section. Alright, now issues about fact and value claims will be found. The formation of appropriate criteria, the relative importance of various criteria, whether the claims meet the criteria. Alright, chapter 5, presumption. Presumption is favor of any proposition as preoccupation of the ground, which implies that it must stand good till some sufficient reason is adduced against it. Burden of proof lies on the side of that would dispute it. On the side that would dispute it. Burden of proof identifies the responsibility to initiate an argument and set out a case sufficient argumentative strength and breadth to bring the decision makers to doubt their presumptions and then see themselves as able to adhere to your proposition. Prima facie case, a case that provides sufficient argument to justify adherence to its proposition if no counter-argument occurs. Burden of rejoinder. The burden of rejoinder must supply a counter-argument. So the burden of rejoinder is the negative argument. All right, brief. Sets out an argumentative outline, form the essential elements of the proposition, including likely counter-arguments. Counter-argument, don't have anything here, but it's later on. Chain of reasoning, a sequence that relies on a series of claims that connect step by step using a commonplace or form of reasoning to move the decision maker to grant adherence to the final claim because of its clear and reasonable connection to the preceding claims. Then we got stock issues, which are what's one stock issue? Significance of stock issue. Problem, solution, motivated sequence, comparative advantage. Develop arguments in favor of your preferred policy and contrast it with other proposals. So that's a comparative advantage. Develop arguments in favor of your preferred policy and contrast it with other proposals. Alright. Chapter 7. 3 forms of support for argument are values, credibility, and evidence. Evidence support for a claim that the arguer discovers from experience or outside authority. Examples, statistics, testimony. Examples, undeveloped instances used in an argument by generalization. Undeveloped instances. So examples are undeveloped instances used in an argument by generalization. Hypothetical. Used where real examples are not available, or when available real examples are not close enough to decision makers' experience. Statistics. Numerical compacting example. Raw central tendency, blah blah blah. Statistical probability. Statistical trends is not going to be on a test. Testimony of fact versus opinion, probably not going to be on a test. Built-in bias, gee whiz graph, not going to be there. Well-chosen average, not going to be there. Muchacho about nothing, no. Sphere dependence, maybe. Sphere dependence is some evidence will be accepted in one sphere and rejected in another one. Kind of evidence may be used in 2 spheres, but more valued in one than the other. Okay, hearsay evidence, testimony a person might give about a statement made by another person. Ordinary testimony versus expert, obviously, fucking experts are better. Reluctant evidence. Alright, reluctant evidence was important. From those who are antagonistic to one's purpose. Consider best evidence in public debates. Negative evidence is the absence of evidence. Document, that's weird. Because negative evidence, yes, I see that as the absence of absence. Or the absence of evidence. Anyway, document evidence, written or recorded evidence, assertion, questionable practice in any situation where the arguer does not have unquestioned credibility with decision makers. Alright, Chapter 8, value. Concepts of what is desirable that arguers use are decision makers understand, or reflect the ends a person admires to the means to attain the ends. Value are concepts of the desirable ends and actions that are stated directly or implied. Stated values, statements of value concepts that are direct. Implied value concepts that are not explicitly stated. So stated values are statements of value concepts that are direct, and implied are value concepts that are explicitly stated. Okay. Positive versus negative values. Terminal values probably won't be there. Abstract values, freedom, justice, truth, that might be there. Concrete values, particular people, group, or an institution. Okay, so people, groups, and institutions are concrete values because they have like an ethos or fucking ethics or whatever. And abstract values, freedom, justice, truth, that's all ambiguous, whatever. Alright, instrumental values, the values needed to accomplish terminal values. Examples are ambition, open mind, honesty, love, logic, etc. And then value systems, a set of linked claims, ethics, theory of good, and the right. Values of warrants justify and reason movement from the ground to the claim, changing values by adding a new one or dropping an existing value. Attacking value, determine what values support the claim, determine what criteria to use in judging those values, determine how to grade the values. Decision makers' value system adherence is most likely when your argument values relate to that of your decision makers. A sphere dependence of values, a sphere is defined by a system of values. Scientific argument, disciplines that use physical science as a model to explain how physical, biological, human, and social entities function and interact. Chapter 9, credibility. Ethos is proof that is generated in the mind of the decision makers. Competence is wisdom, sagacity, reliability, authoritativeness, expertise, and qualification. Trustworthy is virtue, probity, character, evaluative, honest, sincere, and safe. Goodwill, open-minded, impartial, kind, friendly, caring, dynamic, blah, 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 blah. So, okay, here we go. Direct credibility. Direct credibility is a kind of credibility that you develop by making direct statements about yourself. So you're directly talking about yourself. Direct credibility. Secondary credibility is the arguer uses another person's credibility as a grounds for an argument. So secondary credibility is you're talking about somebody else's credibility. Indirect credibility developed by the way you develop, support, and argue your claim. So indirect credibility is like everything that makes up how you are arguing, I guess. So like your spirit of arguing. So anyway, however you remember, homie. Reputation, the credibility you have with decision makers before you argue. Sleeper effect, inoculation, two-sided argument strengthens the decision maker's resistance to later refutation. Maybe in there. Alright, refutation is all of chapter 10, so there's a good chance it will be there because we gotta know it. So faction is a group of people. Refutation embraces the idea of many factions subscribing to some point of view or advocating one decision over another. Requires the open expression of disagreement with an argument made by someone else. Framework, arguers adjust their practices to the specifics of the situation at hand. Goals, what is sought from the decision. Flat catchers are people in organizations whose job is to listen to complaints and send them away. Hell yeah. Alright, 10 pages ago. Frame breaking. Break their typical frames of reference and considering decision double. This isn't going to be on the momentum. Secondary supports sucker holes. What the momentum state of mind regarding critical attention. Blocking outlines to set out the opponent's arguments one by one with your response opposite. Flow sheet, form of note taking or outlining that shows the progress of arguments and the various refutations. Alright, so Cherwitz had a article on multi-dimensional construction, which means you're looking at it from a lot of different facets. And we have a bunch of questions here. Okay, now we're getting into lecture notes. Alright, stasis. Stasis, how are we doing? We're at 13 minutes, that's excellent.